Persona 3 Reload is still about 2 months away, sadly. So as we wait for that, we got another spin-off for Persona 5. Persona 5 Tactica. Persona 5 Tactica is a tactical role-playing game, TRPG for short, that takes place after the main story of the original Persona 5 game. Essentially, it's still a turn-based game, but it happens on what you can think of as on a chessboard. I myself have played other TRPGs before. Some notable ones are Fire Emblem, Triangle Strategy, and Baldur's Gate, however you want to classify that one. And difficulty-wise, I have beaten Fire Emblem 3 Houses and Engage on hard mode, second hardest difficulty of the game. Both with permanent death enabled, meaning characters die in combat, cannot be used for the rest of your playthrough. And with hard and permanent death enabled, I did not have anyone die and was able to complete the game. I'm not saying I'm a grandmaster, but I am somewhat experienced with the cruelty of the TRPG genre. So after spending 30 hours to reach the credit scene of Persona 5 Tactica, the question I'll answer is, can anyone enjoy Persona 5 Tactica? Also, if I accidentally say tactics instead of Tactica, please don't hurt me. I'm tired and I need sleep. As I said before, this game takes place after the events of Persona 5, and the whole gang, minus Sumire, sadly, are just chilling in LeBlanc, as they usually do. Then suddenly they're immediately transported into a metaverse-like realm. They witness the oppression of a crazed woman in a wedding gown, Marie, who wanted everyone to obey her. You can think of this as a palace from the main game, but in this metaverse-like realm, the rules aren't exactly the same. You find out quickly each member of the gang is now under the control of Marie, except for Morgana and Joker. A new playable character that appears exclusively in Tactica is Arena, the leader of the rebellion against Marie's oppression. Without going into spoilers, taking down Marie is just the first step of the story. I thought the story was actually really good. The first 10 hours were a bit slow, probably because it was mostly about getting the gang back together, so there wasn't really that much room for the overall plot to develop well. But basically, after Marie, it got progressively really good, and it had a really satisfying conclusion. Obviously, the main plot points happen either prior or immediately after a fight, and with some filler dialogue pieces when you regroup back at LeBlanc to gear up for the next mission. I do wish the story was presented in a better way that feels more natural. I'm not talking about the art style, more of how the UI worked. It was just menu after menu after menu. This is kind of a reoccurring thing that I wished in several aspects of the game, to where it should lead more into the core game with certain mechanics or features. It would be nice to physically walk around in LeBlanc and physically talk to people like Arena or Toshiro. Not just pressing a couple of menu buttons and then you're in an argument with Yusuke about him being a broke boy. But having a world map would even be good here, as it would better detail of the world that you're in. Marie's kingdom, for example, you just know it's bad through a couple of cutscenes and people saying they're being abused and whatnot. But if we take the original game as an example, we hear about Kamoshida, we saw a cutscene with Kamoshida, but we also explored and witnessed his terrible behavior. The final part was just missing in Persona Tactica. Us witnessing Marie's cruel ways would have made me more invested, especially in the opening hours. Yet again, this is a spin-off and not a full-fledged game, so I do understand that not a whole lot of resources was put into these types of things, especially with Persona 3 Reload just around the corner. All the characters in Persona 5 are amazing. I think we can all agree with that. So of course, they are still amazing even in their cartoony chibi form. I'm not an art expert, so I don't know the proper term, but they look pretty good. The new characters, most notably Arena and Toshiro, are really good. I liked Arena instantly, and I actually grew to like Toshiro surprisingly. My only complaint really is that my waifu, Sumire, is not included in the main story. The new villains introduced, Marie being one of them, are actually really good, and they serve the central plot of the story really well. I don't think anyone will be disappointed in any of the characters introduced, except for maybe the citizens. They might annoy some people, I don't know. The graphics are good for a spin-off. Animations in and out of battle are decent, the cutscenes are decent, character models are good, the world/level design is decent. Still wish they had like a world map of some sort. But notice how I said decent for most of these. I'll return to this later. Music for TRPG is kind of tricky in my opinion. People are trying to think, so you don't really want any overpowering music, but at the same time people are going to be stuck on like a particular turn or the whole battle. So you want something catchy because sometimes silence can be very loud. So you have to hit the right balance between those two extremes, and I think the soundtrack for this game is actually pretty good. Not to the phenomenal levels of Persona 5, but it's still up there, especially for a spin-off game. The soundtrack is also on Spotify, which I wish becomes more of a norm for gaming as a whole, so that gets extra points for me. I know any sort of strategy game scares a lot of people, especially if you're more of a casual gamer, you're worried about being bad at a game and thinking that you're dumb. Luckily for you, this game is really easy. I played this entire game on hard mode, and it was so much easier than other TRPGs. There are 4 total difficulties. There's easy, normal, hard, and merciless. You can change the difficulty whenever you want, ensuring that anyone won't feel stuck in the difficulty that you choose to be in. I appreciate this amount of difficulty options, and I think for a game like this, it's important to cater to different types of people. People that either never touched or even looked at a chessboard, or to Giga Grandmasters that have character sheets of all the characters and enemy sheets on the 3rd and 4th monitor. So yeah, the options are nice to have, but I do question, at least for me, the challenge of the harder difficulties. Now that I got that out of the way, if I had to choose what this game is closely related to, I think it would be Mario and Rabbids Kingdom Battle. I think because it's more you can only control 3 characters at a time, and there is more focus of being behind cover when doing any action. So unlike Fire Emblem, to where it's more about how you distance yourself from the enemy, it's like Mario Rabbids to where you have to worry about line of sight more than anything. I enjoyed Mario Rabbids, even though I don't think I finished the campaign for it. But I grew accustomed to the mechanics pretty fast. In Persona 5 Tactica, each character can move freely within their allotted movement speed, and can either fire their gun or use a Persona skill. Pretty straightforward. There is also this mechanic called Triple Threat, where if you knock down an enemy, usually if you just shoot them when they're not in cover, you can surround them on the board and activate an all-out attack, which dishes more damage to anyone in the zone. And this zone is the area in between of your 3 active characters. The crazy part is, there is no limit for this. You can have your characters be on each corner of the battlefield and still damage every enemy within them. Once I realized that, I just abused it for the rest of my playthrough. I do think this is a bit too strong, and I wish they somehow limited the power of it, but yet again, this game isn't meant to be hard. It's really just made for anyone that enjoys Persona 5, really. As in the original Persona 5 base game, you can also collect Personas for Joker that you gain through rewards for completing a mission. The difference here, however, is that you can equip a Persona to each of your Persona users. That would include Joker and Morgana, Ann, and yeah, everyone. Just not Arena, since she's not a Persona user, but she's still really strong on her own. Maybe it's meant for a merciless run, but I did not use any of these Personas at all. These Personas only had one skill that was tied to the Persona, and then another skill that you can inherit if you were merging Personas. That really was it. And since enemies don't have affinity or type weaknesses like in the base Persona 5 game, there wasn't really a need to have Joker or anyone be a Pokemon trainer. The most notable ones that I saw was some passive skills that increased money gains or voltage gains. That was it. But something like bonus money or XP is something that you typically see in runs of the hardest difficulty. I haven't played Merciless, but if it really is a challenge, then I can see people making sure that they have these passives so they can be prepared for the more challenging levels. But if someone who played through hard and found no use for them, then I doubt people will have the need or desire to engage in that type of mechanic if you were doing it in a normal or easier difficulty. The level/missions themselves, again, they were easy. I think it was more of the lack of enemy diversity and that each mission felt small and short, which made it feel easy. After I beat the game, I was wondering why it felt a bit easier than what I was expecting. And so when I thought about triangle strategy in Fire Emblem, I realized that I distinctively remember certain missions from there, mostly through their length and complexity. And in Persona 5 Tactica, the majority of the missions were just to rout the enemy, and you had 2 baton passes available, which were essentially lives. So you wouldn't have the game over unless you basically had 5 people dead. But if the mission only had 10 enemies, then as long as each character got 2 kills, then you were basically set for the mission. And let me tell you, it doesn't take that long to kill an enemy, especially if you can use an all-out attack. So for me, most notable levels were the boss fights, because of their complexity and length. I don't want to say too much for spoiler reasons, but if the boss battle were kind of the norm in like normal missions, then I think it would be a much more memorable experience. And on a side note, there are side quests that I didn't really dabble on too much because I didn't have the need to get the rewards from them. But from the few that I did do, they seemed to be very difficult by a good margin. There was a couple that were super duper easy, but then there was a couple that was almost like a puzzle and it took me a while to figure it out, in which that I did enjoy. Okay, so something I do wish they did more was just to dabble more into like their Persona 5 flair a bit more. In the opening scenes of Marie, they had like a cool all-out attack pose and everything, which I thought was a W, but that was it. No cool poses or anything like that in battle. Then the menu in LeBlanc for me wasn't really flashy enough, but I guess considering how often I'm in that menu, it can get annoying. But it really sucks that it didn't like get that cool ooh moment with the menus or any animations. I mean, I just look at like the Persona 3 Reload trailer, and I think it's been Persona 5ified. I don't know. I only played Persona 5, but it looks really cool. Maybe it's because maybe like a budget difference or whatnot, but I do understand that they can't fully give it like the over-the-top flair, but at least put in some more like critical pop-ins, please. People are playing this for Persona, not really for Tactica, let's be real. So no one would be complaining about having like an over-the-top presentation. Going back to my question, can anyone enjoy Persona 5 Tactica? It really depends on whether you've played Persona 5. Obviously, it's highly recommended that you beat Persona 5 before playing this, as they do refer to things that happen throughout the base game, including the ending. And so if you love the characters and love the story, then you can for sure play this game. Even if the story starts off slow, it gets really good that you'll be willing to forgive its slow start. If you're here just to play for like the challenge of a TRPG, then you shouldn't really be playing this game since it's not that challenging, therefore doesn't feel as rewarding gameplay wise when you do complete missions or even the entire game. The 4 difficulty options help for any Persona 5 enjoyers, regardless of their background in strategy games, to really be able to play through this entire game from beginning to end. Simple mechanics and familiar mechanics help ease the transition from the base Persona straight onto tactics. And if it feels like this game was on a budget, chances are we are all waiting for Persona 3 Reload in February, and that Persona 5 Tactica is just to satiate our hunger for a bit before Persona 3 re-releases. But that doesn't take away the fact that Persona 5 Tactica is a good casual game for anyone who enjoyed Persona 5's world and characters. Thank you for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe to this video. If you like this type of content, I plan on doing more of this on any game that I do decide to play, and if you have any suggestions for any game, you can leave a comment down below or come join the Discord in the link below that I'm also active in. See you guys later.